Is an esteemed international education institution headquartered in South Africa with a mission to empower individuals through transformative digital education. Now, the school's goal is to equip students with the skills needed to excel in the rapidly evolving digital landscape. With a presence in South Africa, India, Nigeria, Kenya, Tanzania, and the United States, Regenesys serves over 300,000 students and collaborates with more than 1,000 corporate clients, including global giant techs such as M-Pesa, Safaricom, NCBA, Mercedes-Benz, Microsoft, Coca-Cola, and Barclays. Now, Regenesys offers actually a comprehensive range of programs, including undergraduate and postgraduate degrees, corporate education, and short skills courses. And right now, to help us put all this into perspective, we want to delve into a discussion that touches on what is going on in the world of academia. I'm joined by Professor Patrick Osewa, who is the Senior Director for Africa Business Development at Regenesys Business School. Sir, thank you very much for making time to speak to us.
Thank you.
Simply put, do you think the cost of a nation is synonymous with its deliberate sort of investment into the education system? Does what we do in the education sector reflect in a country?
100%, you're correct. Because if you look at countries that have developed very quickly, like South Korea, for example, they invested very heavily in primary, secondary, and higher education. Israel is another example. Countries that have led technological revolution are countries whereby there was significant investment in education. If you look at East Africa, 6 months before independence in 1963, the University of East Africa was established. And this was a very unique university in that the three countries, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, had one institution. If you wanted to study medicine, you went to Uganda. If you wanted to study law, you went to Dar es Salaam. If you wanted to study engineering, you came to Kenya. That existed until 1970. Then the three universities, they split into three universities. Nairobi, the Kenya inherited Nairobi University, and we had one university until 1984, when Moi University became the second institution, and 85, Kenyatta University joined. So we had three universities, and then President Moi liberalized university education. So now we have about 68 universities, 34 private, 34 public, and 4 have interim letter of authorization.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I would say that we have developed a lot in higher education, but it's still not sufficient, because when I studied in the US, in the state of Massachusetts, which had 3 million people at that time, they had 100 universities.
Wow. So our university to population ratio is still quite low.
Correct.
We need to improve on that.
Correct.
In regards to the way our education system has evolved, and I'm glad you've brought in the history, where we began higher education, having a collective university for the East Africa region, and then went our separate ways. Where we are right now, things are changing pretty quick. And, you know, we make a joke. I learned about this plateau in primary school, and people ask, how does that help you in life today? That's the question in regards to education addressing the needs of the current and the future society. What do you think from your observation and experience best, since you are part of an as a business school? How do you think our education system is aligning to the current needs and the future needs of this country and the globe at large?
So in my career, I've worked for many international organizations. I worked with the US government, USAID. I worked for the World Bank. I worked for the Asian Development Bank. So I have traveled around the world. I have visited many institutions. I have taught in many institutions. I think that the biggest challenge I see is that the technology is changing so fast compared to how fast some of the universities can change. And you're finding that the courses being offered or the skills that are being offered to some of the students does not reflect what the market demands. In Kenya, for example, you find that many employers would rather hire students, would have those who have graduated as interns first to assess them, test them, to see whether they can actually fit in the workplace. And that's a very big challenge, because then instead of investing and recruiting a staff that's going to be there, you're testing someone for 3 months or 6 months or 1 year before you decide to hire them. So this is a challenge that we are facing. Many universities are not producing what the market needs. And what I see in many other countries is whereby those who are teaching at the university are also from the industry. For example, you'd have those who are doing telecom engineering. They would be taught by the professors, but also part-time professors from Safaricom, for example, or those who are doing accounting being taught by someone from the banks. So there's a very direct relationship between what is being taught and what the market wants. And in our context in Kenya, that is missing.
Why is it difficult? Why are we in silos? That if you're in academia, you operate in academia, you be a lecturer and focus on that. You can't be working at Safaricom and choose also to teach at the same time. And it's proving to be a problem, definitely, because there is a huge disconnect between the industry and where we are training people who are coming to work in the industry. How do we break this wall that we've mounted over time?
I think it's collaboration, understanding what the market needs, and knowing that as a university, the role of a university is 3 things. 1, to do research. 2nd, to train students. And 3rd one is to support community. So a university must be focused on those 3 things to understand what is going on in the country. And if they're not doing the 3, they're only doing 1, they might miss 1 component. It's like a stool with 3 legs. And what I see, not just in Kenya, but around the world, is whereby there's a disconnect between the 3. And so if you don't understand that what is required in a country is this type of skills, let's take digital, for example, you'd find that in some institution, there'll be someone teaching computer science, but something that they learned 3 years ago. Almost every month or every 6 months, things are changing. If you take AI right now, it's changing very, very rapidly. And we have moved to a stage whereby currently the entities that are doing AI, some of them are focused on Kiswahili AI. This is something just started a couple of months ago. If you are a lecturer that graduated you graduated a while ago and you're focused on what you learned when you were in at the university or doing your master's or PhD, then you're not up to date with what's going on. So it requires very close collaboration between universities, their professors, and what's going on in the industry. They're providing consultancy services to the industry and having the industry also coming, experts coming to the university to teach. It sounds simple, but that collaboration and having a mechanism and a framework to be able to do that, I think that is what is lacking. We find it in some countries, but it does not exist everywhere.
Definitely. And this brings me to Regenesys Business School, because, I mean, it started in South Africa 27 years ago. I'm trying to calculate how old I was then, you know, but when it was starting. Now you're expanding across Africa. You also, you know, you have presence in the United States. What are you doing different, especially coming into the Kenyan market? How different does it vary from the other markets that you've operated in? And what is the it factor with Regenesys?
So in Kenya, we are focused on 3 things. First is Kenya is going through a digital transformation. Kenya is a unique country in that the vision of President Kibaki was to transform Kenya into a digital economy. And that's why, looking around the world, the driver of technology was Silicon Valley and then Bangalore in India, and then he proposed that it should be the Silicon Savannah. President Uhuru continued that effort and expanding the internet infrastructure, and President Ruto is doing the same, in fact accelerating what had started. So Kenya, compared to many African countries, including South Africa, we have a much better connectivity. We are still not there yet, particularly in some rural areas, in some of our northeastern province, in some of our lake region. But in summary, Kenya has done a lot in terms of trying to do that. So they still require significant investment to be able to ensure that nobody is left behind. We find that in the cities, we have a divide. We have the rich, who are very highly connected, and the poor, who are not as connected. In the rural areas, we have people who are left behind. We have those in the urban areas are more connected than those in the rural areas. And we also have the generational divide, whereby the younger people are more connected than the older people. So we need to address all these facets to ensure that if you're going to truly have a digital economy, that nobody is left behind. So Regenesys, we are providing a lot of digital training across the board, and that's a very significant part of what we're doing in many of the countries that we are present. The second area that we are focusing on is entrepreneurship, and looking at how we can make, because there's no way an economy like Kenya can create jobs for everybody graduating. About 1 million people graduating every year. We can't have jobs, formal jobs. So luckily for Kenya, the psyche of a Kenyan is to start their own business.
Yes.
Yeah. And so there's already that in our DNA that we want to start our business. Then how do you build the skills for people to start business? Across various sectors, 40% of our GDP is agriculture. To what extent are we benefiting and building our capacity to ensure that from farming to supply chain to market and export, we have built the capacity of our population, particularly women, because 60% of the farming is done by women.
Yes.
Building the capacity of our population to be able to do that. The third one is innovation. How do you create an innovation culture in a country? We see this in some of the countries. In Korea, very innovative culture. Everybody's always thinking about innovation. In Israel, 30% of the technology stock market in the US are companies from Israel, one country. The way that the population thinks about innovation is extremely important. And so in Kenya, we are there. You're finding young people, and the CBC program that is being established with a pilot starting in September and being nationwide in January next year is a good step in the right direction, whereby we are actually making sure that our young learners understand digital.
Okay.
Yes.
Definitely. And I'm glad you've touched on the pros, the benefits, and your approach as Regenesys. And this brings me back to, as we finish up, the top topic that we are having in the country right now is the issue of university funding. We understand you've rightly put it, our economy is hugely informal. Majority of Kenyans are not well off, honestly speaking. Looking at bank savings, almost 80% of the population, not more than 100K in savings. This is a concern. So when it comes to funding education, it is a huge sacrifice for majority of Kenyans. There's been interventions with help, and based on your experience, just observing the way things have evolved. Now we have a new funding model that bands students depending on their need. What's your take on that as somebody in the education business as we finish?
So I've not looked very closely at the funding model because it's still new. But what I would say is that if you need money for people to go to school, and when people go to school, they get money. If you don't have money, people don't go to school, and then there's no money. So the greatest equalizer for and the liberator from poverty is education. And in Kenya, families are willing to sell almost all their assets for their children to go to school. So there's a very strong commitment towards education, which I don't see in many countries around the world. So given that, the challenge is that many of our families do not have the resources to do that. So what is required is an innovative approach whereby some people might get funding directly from the banks, and then they pay when they finish. Some might get money from the government, particularly the very low income people might not get resources from the bank because a collateral may be required. So looking at a collective effort of different sources of financing to be able to ensure that everybody gets an education. I think that the little that I've looked at the new funding model, the mean testing is the right way to do it. There are challenges. I recall when Obamacare was introduced in the US, there were challenges with the initiation. When Modicare, the health insurance for India for 500 million people was introduced, there were lots of challenges. So I think having challenges in a new system is normal, but I like what President Ruto has done. He basically said that anybody who qualifies for university should go in and they can sort out the funding model later, as opposed to saying you will not be admitted until we sort out the problem. No, everybody's admitted. It becomes a university problem, not a student's problem.
All right, lovely. Prof, so Liz, okay, this is the first time I'm having this conversation, but I'm looking forward to more conversations in this regard, matters to do with education in the country. And I'm glad that our Regenesys Business School is making an entrance and trying to make a mark, especially addressing the current needs, finding ways to utilize technology, which is very, very critical. Regenesys is located at GTC Office Tower, 12th floor. And that is, if you want to be a partaker of transformative education in this country, then there you have it. That was Professor Patrick Osewa, Senior Director for Africa Business Development, Regenesys Business School. This particular moment, we put a full stop to today's show. Thank you very much for joining with us over the past 24 to 30 minutes or so. My name is Nokip Kimboy. Have yourself a good afternoon. We're out.